Hi, a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Dr. Edmund Chow. I'm the program leader at the MA Arts Pedagogy and Practice at LASALLE College of the Arts in Singapore. So thank you for your interest to take a look at this program. Before we do so, before I introduce you to the overview of what we do here in our program, I thought I'll share the latest video of our recent graduates. Right, so let me just share screen and share with you what we do here. So here at MA Arts Pedagogy and Practice, we invite practitioners from various disciplines, people from dance, theater, music, anyone from the performing arts, to design and fine arts, people in technical theater, technical music, audio production, film, curatorial practice, literary arts, fashion, filmmaking. Yeah, we talked about that. So anyone in the arts can really come into this program as long as you are a practicing artist and you have some kind of teaching background in the art form. All right, so let me quickly address some of the more administrative questions so that we can get your questions answered. This is a 1.5 year full-time program and or a 3-year part-time program, but the preferred model for this is the full-time program. So it happens every Monday and Thursday in the evenings from 7 to 10 p.m. For the first year. And then in the last 6 months of the program, which is your thesis semester, it will be on a Wednesday night. All right, so it's basically 2 evenings followed by 1 evening in the last semester. All right, so that's the program is 3 semesters long for a full-time program. And the eligibility for this program really would require you to have a good bachelor's degree in any good recognized university, preferably in the arts, and you should have a substantial experience as an artist, as an arts professional, or a researcher in the arts. All right, if you're a foreign student, you need to have a minimum of IELTS 7.0. And to apply for this program, you need to write a statement of purpose between 500 and 1,000 words to talk about your research interest and why you think this program is suitable for you. And we need a reference letter from your employer, as well as a portfolio that will demonstrate your years of practice in the arts, as well as teaching in the arts, okay? Now, these are the more technical administrative things I want to talk about. So this is the tuition fees for the Singapore citizens as well as international students. It is quite exorbitant. And here are some of the scholarships that you might want to take note of. The Singapore Digital Scholarship and the NAC Scholarship have already come to a close. For the Design Singapore, is coming up on 19th April. The deadline is 19th April, and then we have the Ngee Ann Kong Si in May. The LBKM is already closed. These two, Tan Yen Kiam and the Lee Seong Tae, are from the Tan Kah Kee Foundation. The deadline is 30th April. The Lee Kuan Yew scholarship is usually for the PSC scholars, and then LaSalle is very much later on in the year. So if you're interested in this program, you need to start thinking about it now and to see how you can quickly apply for this program to apply for some form of scholarship and funding. All right. Okay, so let's go into the program itself. So like I talked about the full-time program. So this is a full-time program, just as an illustration. We start in January 2022, and then we will end in 2023 in June. Okay, so each semester is broken up into two modules. So in the first semester from Jan to June next year, you will start with research methods and investigating practice. Now, what happens in research methods class is that we plunge you into research, which can be quite a daunting task, but we will ask you to start thinking about research, and I will introduce you to the different ways we research in the arts education classroom. Basically, what can you do to document changes? For example, if you're interested in looking at behavioral changes in students, what do you do as an arts practitioner as well as a teacher to make those experiments and document the experiments and analyze those experiments and look at the data findings, right? So that's research methods. For this particular module, we also have a common module that is across all the MA programs here at LaSalle. So for about first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, so it changes every year, you will be meeting the rest of the postgraduates and come together to attend common lectures. And then you come back to the home program where you look at research methods specifically in arts education, okay? And then within this semester, you also have investigating practice. So investigating practice really allows you to think about yourself as an artist, as an arts practitioner, to investigate your own practice, to think about your own teaching philosophy, to think about who are the people who had influenced your own artistic taste, who are the people who have influenced your practice, right? So you think about them, and you're also required to observe other practitioners outside of curriculum hours on how they practice. So you do classroom observations. So for example, if you are a theater maker, you go into another theater maker's studio or rehearsal space to observe how the other theater maker makes theater or teaches theater, all right? So that's investigating practice. All right, and then in the next semester, August to December, you will look at experiencing diverse pedagogies and transforming practice. All right, experiencing diverse pedagogies is where you now expose yourself to a different form of teaching. So if I'm a theater maker, I'm now encouraged to look at, let's say, a fashion designer teach fashion, right? So by observing another practitioner outside of curriculum hours to see how he or she teaches, it informs me and it makes me reflect on how I can also adopt certain practices from this, observation. So you're experiencing diverse pedagogies, and it allows you to think about how you can borrow different disciplines, borrow different forms to perhaps answer some of your research questions as well. You know, how you can adapt and adopt differently for your own theater class, for example. All right. This is also a transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary module where you will be asked to do group work, right, in class. And in your group work, you will be paired up with different people from a different discipline to create something that is inventive and exploratory. So the cohort that you had just watched from that video, one of the groups was interested in looking at heartbeat. They theorized and hypothesized that when students are doing something, let's say they're watching a horror movie, and they hypothesize that when the heartbeats beat at the same rate, there must be something happening, right? Maybe they're very engaged at that moment, or maybe that's when creativity happens. So they were trying to hypothesize and theorize that. So what they did in the experiments is that they tied and they got the gallery visitors to wear Fitbit watches, smart devices where they have the heartbeats tabled on the wall so that we can see what's the beat per minute. And so we were doing different activities, right? They got the visitors to play, to do an activity, to listen to a piece of music, to watch a horror film, to do basically things in the arts. And so they are able to track the heart rates, right? So that was a very fun exploratory exercise where you are allowed to fail, basically. And there's another group that looking into a different sense. You know, we have the different senses, right? We have the sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of hearing, and tactile sense of touch and taste, right? So they were trying to look into a very different kind of sense, and they got the visitors to explore the different sensations and then to respond to it through a different art form. And they eventually painted a very different kind of a collage when they were responding aesthetically. Right, so there are different ways of looking at interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary arts practices, and experiencing diverse pedagogies allows you to really play with the form and learn from each other. Okay, so once you have exposed yourself to a different form, now you come back to your own practice to transform it. That's what transforming practice is all about. All right, because now I've been exposed to fashion design, or I've been exposed to fine arts, or been exposed to dance. Now I'm now using it to transform my practice in theater. This is an example again. All right. So you transform your practice by borrowing the different forms and start thinking about, okay, now I can use, just like Daniel Jenkins. So let me give an example. Daniel Jenkins thought that his students could not emote in his acting classes. So he decided to use music processes to get them to listen to different kinds of music, to get them to feel a certain way, which triggered different kinds of memories, right? So that became his research finally in his thesis. But he borrowed music to help his students, acting students, emote better. Another of my alum, Durga, she is a Bharatanatyam dancer, and she borrowed acting practices to help these students act better and to have a more student-centered, driven kind of learning in a very traditional Indian dance form, right? So here you are allowed and encouraged to really play with the different forms to see how another practice can inform your own practice, so that you can change the way you teach in your own artistic discipline. All right, so that's transforming practice. So because of that, you know, it almost feels like there is a trajectory of learning and experimenting, and eventually this leads to a final dissertation, which is your 15,000 word thesis. For some, you can take the 5,000 word option as well with a practical component. All right, so what happens is you start developing it into a research question, and really documenting the findings and how that really transformed and changed your own practice. So that's a more academic approach to research writing. So in general, we look at some of these topics here on the screen. We look at the philosophies of teaching and learning. We look at teaching models and learning styles. We look at curriculum design and lesson planning. We also investigate creativity and embodied learning. We look at yourself as a reflective practitioner and how you can document your own learning throughout these 1.5 years. And in terms of the practice, you also investigate questions around aesthetics and beauty, cognition and emotions. You play around with professional artistry and applied arts in communities to see, you know, if you are able to transport and transpose your practice into the community. For example, to look into mental well-being for mothers working from home. So that was one of the other projects that the current batch went through, right? So they wanted to investigate mental health, mental wellness, and decided to bring the arts into the community setting. Okay, and then we also look into evaluations and assessments. How do we actually evaluate artistic practice in the classroom? So those are all the topics, general topics that we will investigate throughout the 1.5 years. And as you can see, pedagogy informs practice. Practice by observing other practitioners, it also informs your own practice. And then this comes back into your research. And because of your research, it informs the way you teach in your own art form. All right, so it's very cyclical. And because of the progressiveness of the modules, that is why it is encouraged that you take the 1.5 years full-time um, uh, model for you, all right, instead of the 3 years, which is part-time, where you take one module per semester instead of two, but it becomes a little different and difficult to now see that continuity. All right, so let's just take a look at some of the pictures that you've seen. So I have artists in residence and guest lecturers coming in from different parts of the world. But right now, because of COVID, we have not been able to get them back online. I mean, back into the space. So we're inviting them to do things online as well. So this is Kelvin Cooper from Bronx Community College, New York. So even though we're not dancers, we got into dance forms and looking at our own bodies and embodied knowledge and embodied learning. Okay. Stephen Wang, Professor Stephen Wang is from New York University, and he is a theater maker. And basically he got us into questioning techniques, you know, what we can do to question and question better, basically. Yeah. This is David Forrest, a professor from RMIT Australia. He's a music professor. So he talks about music and how music can also, how we can document music and we do research in music. So we are always exposed to people and lecturers and researchers in different arts disciplines so that we get a good field, a good view of the field and how we can also borrow from different disciplines and learn from each other. All right, we also have public engagement series, we have public lectures, and because of COVID, we had them online on Facebook Live and YouTube Live last year. So we also have the overseas study trips within our program. We have the Transcultural Collaboration Project, which is a partnership with Zurich University of the Arts and Hong Kong University, City University Hong Kong, China Academy of Arts, and Taipei University of the Arts. One of my students went overseas to engage in arts installations. And so he came back with a lot of transcultural practices, working with people, international students across all the different universities. All right. So that was the Transcultural Project, but we also have a study trip to Cambodia, which is a circus school, very similar to what we have at LaSalle. They have all the different arts forms. They have from fine arts to performing arts, to circus, you know, to dance, theater, etc. And they basically, it's a social enterprise where these circus performers, once they have graduated in their own school and their own program, they go out and perform professionally, and then they earn professional fees, and then some of the money comes back to the school to support the community arts programs, right? So because in Cambodia, their students are coming from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So that helps to feed into an ecosystem where artists help their own communities to survive. And so we have been partnering with them to observe their own traditional pedagogies, right? We're also very interested in the traditional art forms here at LaSalle. Some of the alumni that you might recognize, I just want to highlight a few. Peggy Ferroa from theater, Kamini Ramachandran, a storyteller. They're the first batch from our arts pedagogy and practice. We have Fran Borgia and Matt Gray, film and theater. We have Said Ibrahim, drumming, who was featured recently in 2019. Very instrumental in the drumming scene, who brought drumming into the schools in Singapore. And then we have Durga in dance. We have Yara Ileto. She was the Young Artist Award winner. And then we also have Shada Harrison. You might have seen her on TV and on stage. And Daniel Jenkins also in theater. And our alumni are very, very prolific in research writing. So this is a very research-driven curriculum and program where I will show you how to do research in a robust and rigorous way. So Ang Ting has been published, right, in the arts, in the film journal, and he has also won awards. right? We also have Lian Sutton, a theater maker who also wrote about his own traditional silat, and he's published as well. Okay, so as you can see, we have a very diverse people coming into our program, all right? And I thought I might just leave you with this Lian's testimonial.
I've sort of come from a long line of teachers in my family. Both my parents teach traditional martial arts. My grandparents owned a secondary school back in the UK, and so teaching has always been, in a sense, in my blood. So I knew that even in my practice as an actor, as a martial artist, I knew that that was always intertwined with the teaching aspect. I learned, but I learned to teach as I was learning. So there was always a constant kind of cycle of understanding to impart, which is why I took this master's, knowing that, going into that. I've taken a lot from it. I've spoken in my first conference. I've recently been published. It's the first published article I have on Silat, on the style of martial art that I do. So I kind of travel in this two veins, these two systems that I work with, the martial arts aspect and the acting, the theatre. And my passion has always been trying to merge the two, or seeing how they can have a dialogue with each other, how the actor can help the martial artist and vice versa. And this course has kind of given me the knowledge, the agency, the critical thinking skills to be able to explore it. And also to document it, because I think that's an important part of my process as a traditional martial artist. As with any living tradition, especially an oral tradition or something that's experiential, to be able to document it so that a long way down in the future people will have access to this information and it doesn't become lost. Yeah, I think that is going to be continuing, that's going to be a continual process on my part, and this is just a stepping stone towards what I'd like to achieve, which is to write more, to engage more in the field of academia, in the field of research, and of course in the field of teaching.
All right, just maybe a quick sharing about where and how I started doing my MA years ago. I was teaching in a prison, and just a little bit of that story. I was teaching in a prison, Kaki Bukit Center Prison School, and as you can see, there was a workshop that I had invited guest lecturers to come in to workshop with my inmate theatre club members. So they were asked to fashion a pot, right? All of them were given clay and they were doing all the fashioning of the pot. And this particular inmate decided to do this honey pot, which resembled Winnie the Pooh honey pot. And as you can see, there was this lid, this chain going around the lid. And so I asked him, if there is a chain around the lid, how can you get the honey? Because it's closed, right? So I said, how do you open it? And then he just said, you just need to smash it. And at that point in time, I was thinking, wow, to smash a piece of artwork seemed like there was something deeper than just, that there might be some kind of issues that might emerge, very symbolic destruction of an artwork. So I thought, I didn't know how to close this Pandora's box if I were to probe deeper. Like, what do you mean? Or ask him to do that. So at that point, I realized as a teacher, I was doing drama at that time. I didn't know how to really deal with some of the social emotional issues that might emerge. What happens if this inmate started crying or started becoming violent? So I realized that I had to equip myself with postgraduate studies. And that's why I went to New York University to pursue applied theater as well as drama therapy at that time, because I thought my context of students would require me to equip myself with those skills, right? And that's how I got into applied theater, and that's how I got into this kind of work that deal with human emotions and feelings. So there's a very mixed kind of a space between education and therapy. So we try not to move into the therapy component, but a lot of us as educators are working in a therapeutic space. And that's also something that I encourage us to come and explore how to use the arts to work with social and emotional learning. All right. So that's my work. So I started in MOE and then went into the prison to do prison theater. And then many years later, I did my PhD and went into Afghanistan to do to look at culture industry within conflict zones, right? And then I came back to Singapore and I moved into a business school and I researched in leadership and storytelling. And now I'm here at LaSalle looking into arts pedagogy and practice. All right, so with this, I'd like to leave a quote with you by Maxine Green, a proponent of aesthetic education in New York. She says, "The arts," it has been said, "cannot change the world, but they may change human beings who might change the world." All right, so that's the quote I'd like to leave you with. And with that, I'd like to end this session and we can open the space for Q&A.